Chapter 4232. Little darling, it was daytime when a certain someone arrived at the nameless sword sect. However, he did not care about day or night now. He directly flashed into the nameless sword sect. The disciples guarding the door only saw a white afterimage. In the blink of an eye, it disappeared again. They all thought that their eyes were playing tricks on them, so they did not take it seriously. A certain someone soon arrived at He Xinjia's courtyard and easily opened the restriction. However, he found that there was no one inside. However, he found a note on the desk in the room with a few lines of words written on it. Ex-fiancé, didn't I tell you not to disturb my happy life? I went to play with my little darling. Go back to where you came from. Little sister is not interested in you anymore. Little darling? The cold air from a certain someone's body instantly turned all the bottles and jars in the house into pieces. Very well. He wanted to see who that little darling was. However, a certain someone only realized a crucial question after a while. Where exactly did she go with that little darling? He walked out of the courtyard and casually grabbed a disciple, forcing him to ask, "Where did Yun Chujo go?" The disciple was almost frozen into an ice sculpture. He did not want to say anything, but the pressure from debeaming made him spit out a mouthful of blood. He had no choice but to tell the truth. Junior sister Yun went to the sword technique conference with Master Ouyang and the others. The sword technique conference? Debeaming frowned slightly. Didn't he say that he had gone to play with little darling? He asked again. Who has she been having an unusual relationship with recently? The disciple was so frightened that he had fainted, naturally. He told him everything he knew. She is very close to Li Zhuangji Zhao Hui, and Hall Master Zhuge and Zhuge Dong. Elder Dongfang, Elder Duanmu. Debeaming snorted coldly. Anything else? Yes, there's also Chu Fang. Ever since the whale feast, Junior sister Yun and Chu Fang have a very good relationship. They even went to the ghost city of Tao Tai together, and were trapped there for a month. Oh right, they even went to the bewildering shadow forest together. Chu Fang often comes to look for junior sister Yun. Debeaming interrupted him and asked, "Did Chu Fang go to the sword technique conference that you mentioned?" The disciple nodded repeatedly. Yes, he went. I heard that Chu Fang has been smiling whenever he meets people recently. He's so high-spirited and happy. Debeaming knocked the disciple out with one palm. It seemed that Chu Fang was the little darling that she talked about. Because whether it was from the time or the possibility, Chu Fang was the most suspicious. Chapter 4233. Sword Technique Conference. Due to Xue Wuji's delay of a few days and the time on the way back, when Debeaming left the nameless sword sect, He Xinjiu had already arrived at the venue of the Sword Technique Conference. Initially, He Xinjiu did not want to come to the Sword Technique Conference at all. This Sword Technique Conference was attended by a private person and not a sect. Moreover, it was not compulsory, so this fellow did not have much interest. But Chu Fang was interested. The reason was very simple. Xiao Yu would definitely attend. If he did not see such a good opportunity to meet her, he would be a fool. Therefore, he tried his best to persuade He Xinjiu to go with him. Junior sister Yun. The Sword Technique Conference is a grand event for all the swordsmen in the northern continent. If you don't go, you will regret it for the rest of your life. Not interested. Junior sister Yun. Don't you want to make a name for yourself in the Sword Technique Conference? Am not interested. Junior sister Yun. The Sword Technique Conference is very lively. Not only are there sword techniques competitions, but there are also many vendors. There are all kinds of delicacies everywhere. Senior brother Chu, when do we leave? Chu Fang. It turned out that this guy was a foodie. Although the Sword Technique Conference wasn't organized by the sect, the nameless sword sect was famous for their swordsmanship, so they naturally attached great importance to it. After a discussion, it was decided that Master Ouyang would personally lead the team. He would bring Elder Duanmu and the others along with a few successive disciples. As for Yun Chujiu, an inner disciple, with the help of Elder Duanmu and Elder Dongfang, the two great Buddhas, she also followed obediently. The Sword Technique Conference was held once every 10 years, and was held at the foot of Mount Azure. The reason why it was set at Mount Azure was mainly because Mount Azure was located in the center of the northern continent, making it convenient for everyone to go there. Furthermore, the 6 major sects had agreed that the area within a few hundred miles of Mount Azure was a public area. Bai Li and Yun Chujiu were not allowed to touch it. No one was allowed to touch it. On the way, Yun Chujo asked Chu Fong what delicious food he had. Finally, they got down to business. Senior brother Chu, there must be prizes in this sword technique conference, right? Otherwise, what's the point of competing? Just for reputation? That's not worth it. Chu Fong. Only you don't take reputation seriously and others take it seriously, okay? Those who participate in the sword technique conference, if they are outstanding disciples, they will be valued by the sect, and the sect will also have rewards. If they are outstanding itinerant cultivators, they will be favored by the 6 great sects, and have the chance to become disciples of the 6 great sects, or even elders. In addition, the top 10 will have a certain reward, which comes from the rent of the surrounding shops and the profits from selling the Tsongli blood ginseng, which is unique to Yun Songshan. Yun Chujo blinked her eyes. Then how will the sword technique conference be compared? If Master Ouyang goes up on a whim, what will the others compete for? The corner of Chu Feng's eyes twitched. Master Ouyang jumping? Are you sure there's nothing wrong with your choice of words? Junior sister Yun, you may not know this, but there's an unwritten rule in the sword technique conference. The masters and elders of the 6 great sects don't go on stage. Those who go on stage to compete are usually disciples of the various sects or some itinerant cultivators. Yun Chujo curled her lips when she heard this. How could this be called the sword technique conference? Wasn't it still a competition between the various great sects and the selection of some new disciples? However, her purpose was to eat and stroll around, so this had nothing to do with her. She would just watch the show when the time came. 2 days later, the group arrived at Yunsong City, which was only dozens of miles away from Yunsong Mountain. The first thing Chu Fong did after entering the city was to ask whether the people from the Flying Flower Island had arrived. After receiving a positive answer, he immediately grinned foolishly. Chapter 42-34, Sword Evaluation. Yun Chujo could not bear to look at him. Senior brother Chu was usually a very observant person. Why did he turn into an idiot the moment he heard about Little Moon? The sword technique conference did not just consist of a competition. There were also other procedures such as sword evaluation, sword technique explanation, and so on. No matter what, it would take at least 10 days to half a month. Therefore, the nameless sword sect had booked an inn. They were saving it for the night when they came back to rest. Just as they settled down, Chu Fong came to Yun Chujo in a hurry. Junior sister Yun, about that, can you help me ask her out? Yun Chujo chuckled. Senior brother Chu, it's not like I'm the one looking for Little Moon. Why don't you ask her out yourself? Chu Fong stammered, about that, if Island Master Chi sees me, he definitely won't let her out. If you can speak well, you can definitely get Island Master Chi to agree. Yun Chujo looked at Chu Fong as if she was looking at an idiot. Senior brother Chu, don't you have the Little Moon's voice transmission talisman? Can't you just use the voice transmission talisman to summon her? Why do you have to come here to be tortured? Chu Fong. That's right, how could he forget that he still had a voice transmission talisman? Yun Chujo looked speechlessly at Chu Fong, who ran away in a panic. Indeed, the IQ of a person in love was 0. This fellow thought of his crazy fiancée who was going against the heavens and the earth again, and the corners of his mouth curled up. If nothing unexpected happened, the pretty boy would probably come knocking on his door at the end of the sword technique conference. He'd just wait and see. No matter how he changed his 72 transformations, he couldn't escape from her palm. The next morning, the sword technique conference officially began. Like all grand events, at the beginning it would definitely be some influential figures talking. Hei Shinjo was nibbling on a spirit fruit as she listened incoherently. This fellow glanced at the VIP seats and didn't see Tower Master Luochen. However, he didn't take it to heart. It would be better if he didn't come. It was annoying to see him. Finally, those people finished their conversation and the host of the sword technique conference announced the start of the sword tasting. The so-called sword tasting was when a sword forger took out his or her best work and displayed it. Most sword forgers wanted to make a name for themselves by doing so. This way, the sword that they forged in the future would be sold at a good price. Of course, for a sword forger at Elder Duamus level, it was beneath them to sell their swords for money. However, in order to protect the reputation of the nameless sword sect, they would still take out 1 or 2 swords and display them. As soon as the host finished speaking, Several sword forgers who had already signed up jumped onto the high platform and took out their swords to display them one by one. As the saying goes, the sword is light and agile. Everyone, please take a look. The sword that I have forged is as thin as paper, but it is incomparably sharp. It can be said to be a first-class high-grade sword. What's the use of being light and thin? This treasure sword of mine can bend at will without breaking. If a treasure sword doesn't have enough toughness, then it would be better to use a knife. This treasure sword of mine is not only light and thin, but it is also very flexible. It is inlaid with precious starjwa stone, and its lethality has more than doubled. Yun Chujo looked at those sword forger sharp-tongued Granny Wang and felt very bored. She said to Chu Fong beside her, "Senior brother Chu, I'm going to eat a bowl of wonton at the wonton stall over there. Do you want to go?" Yun Chujo noticed that Chu Fong did not react after she finished speaking. She turned her head and saw Chu Fong looking into the distance in a daze. Yun Chujo looked in the direction he was looking and saw Xiao Yu sitting behind Island Master Qi. Yun Chujo coughed a few times before Chu Fong came back to his senses. He looked a little embarrassed. "Junior Marshal Sister Yun, what did you say just now?" Chapter 42:35 Fast and Slow. Yun Chujo looked at him speechlessly and asked, "Did you see Little Moon yesterday?" Chu Fong looked annoyed. Island Master Qi didn't allow her to leave the inn, and now he has made her sit behind him and not allow her to leave. I can only take a few glances from afar. Yun Chujo heard the bitterness in Chu Feng's words and could not help but laugh. She said, "Anyway, the sword technique conference will take a few days. I don't believe that Island Master Qi can keep looking at Little Moon. You will see her eventually." Chu Fong scratched his head in embarrassment and asked, "Junior Sister Yun, what did you say just now?" "I said that the sword ranking above is really boring. It's nothing more than Granny Wang selling melons and boasting. I'm going to eat a bowl of wonton at the wonton stall over there. Are you going?" Chu Fong saw that Xiao Yu could not be seen at the wonton stall, and immediately rejected her. Yun Chujo pursed her lips. She had really forgotten about loyalty at the sight of lust. If she did not want to go, then so be it. She would go by herself. Hence, this fellow squeezed through the crowd to the wonton stall and ordered a bowl of wonton. As it was still the morning and the sword tasting was in full swing, not to mention the wonton stall, Hei Shinjo was the only guest at this bunch of snack stalls. Some vendors even stretched their necks to watch the show. The owner of the wonton stall was a middle-aged couple. He specially served Yun Chujo a few more wontons. After Yun Chujo thanked him, she began to eat. The old couple made wontons while talking incoherently. "Master, you said you've made wontons for your whole life. Why are you still making them so slowly?" the old lady said with disdain. The old man was not annoyed. He said slowly, "Old lady, even though I'm slow, the wontons I make are well behaved and never give away. You're fast. You always leave a few behind. In the end, I ate all the noodles. I've never eaten wontons with fillings in my life. I've been eating noodles all my life." The old lady glared at him. "What? Are you not happy? There were so many young men chasing me back then. Why did I choose a slow-tempered person like you?" The old man smiled. "One is fast and one is slow. One is fast and one is slow. Aren't they perfect for each other? This is just like those people who compete with swords. It's not always good to be fast or slow." When Yun Chujo heard this, her heart skipped a beat. She smiled and asked, "Old man, isn't it said that in this world, speed is the only thing that cannot be broken? How can it be good to be slow?" The old man chuckled and said, "Although you say that, it's not necessarily bad to be slow. For example, this old woman of mine is very fast, but every time I cook I have to expose a few of them. Although I wrap them slowly, the quality is very good." The old man has watched countless matches on this competition stage. If you only focus on speed, you can't follow the rules. This speed is also slow, but as long as you seize the opponent's weakness and succeed in one strike, this slow is also fast. Yun Chujo was stunned when she heard that. She recalled the time when the drifters had transformed into two human figures to compete with their swords. One was fast and the other was slow, but there was still no winner. At that time, she was still wondering why slow sword could be evenly matched with fast sword. However, she did not expect to be exposed by this old man. That's right. There was no absolute speed or slowness in the first place. It was just a relative term. Cut the complexity and simplify it. Get rid of those useless moves and find the opponent's weakness. Even slow sword was enough to defeat the opponent in one move. The old lady saw that Yun Chujo was stunned and could not help but glare at the old man. You're spouting nonsense. Look, this little girl has become a demon. You're just a wonton seller. And you're still talking about swordsmanship and feigning. Chapter 4236 Slow Sword Intent. The old man did not expect that Yun Chujo would be in a daze after hearing his casual remark. For a moment she was also a little confused. She said embarrassedly, I was just making a casual remark. Who would have thought that this little girl would become a demon? The old couple was at a loss. They wanted to wake up Yun Chujo, but they were afraid that something was wrong, so they could only look at her worriedly. After a moment, Yun Chujo came back to her senses and bowed solemnly to the old man. Old man, thank you for your advice. The old man was confused and stuttered. Young lady, what do you mean by this? Yun Chujo smiled brightly. Although the old man didn't mean it, I heard that he meant it and solved a problem that I have been puzzled about. Of course I should thank you. Although the old man still didn't quite understand, he was relieved when he saw that Yun Chujo was smiling and didn't seem to be in trouble. This little girl was dressed in the nameless sword sect's uniform. If something really happened to them, they wouldn't be able to afford it. Yun Chujo comprehended the slow sword intent in that instant and was very grateful to the old couple. If she was treated well by others, she would treat them 100 times better. Seeing that the old couple's life didn't seem to be very comfortable, she wanted to help them. Although she could give the old couple a lot of spiritual stones, the old couple didn't have high spiritual power, but they were quite strong-willed and probably wouldn't want them. She blinked her eyes, took out a dark spirit egg and said, Old man, thank you for your advice. This dark spirit egg is for you. It's not a valuable thing. Please don't take offense. The old man was not willing to accept it. He kept trying to avoid it. Yun Chujo smiled and said, This is a gift from the shopkeeper when I bought the item. The chances of having dark spirit stones in it are very small, so even if you sell it, it won't be worth much. Just keep it. The old man saw that Yun Chujo insisted on giving it away, so he had no choice but to keep it. Then he said, Little girl, that old man will be thick-skinned enough to accept it. However, you have to come and visit often these few days. Yun Chujo said with a smile, of course. Not only are there seats here, but there are also delicious food. It's much better than those acrobatics on the stage. The old man and the old lady were amused by her. The old lady said angrily, You little girl, everyone is here for the sword technique conference. Only you think that it's acrobatics. Yun Chujo giggled and began to chat with the old couple. During the conversation, Yun Chujo specifically instructed the two of them not to give the dark spirit egg to anyone else. They must go to the shop and have someone there take a look at it. The old couple nodded in agreement, but they did not take it seriously. They were prepared to wait until the sword technique conference was over before going to the shop to take a look. The dark spirit egg that Yun Chujo gave them was only a 2-star egg. It was not that she was reluctant to give them a better one, but that it was a sin to have a treasure. A 2-star dark spirit stone was just right for them. Apparently the old couple liked Hei Shinjo, who was very witty. Moreover, it was not noon yet, and there were no customers, so they started to talk. While Yun Chujo was chatting with the old couple, the crowd exclaimed. Yun Chujo turned her head and saw a middle-aged man on the high platform. He was holding a treasure sword in his hand. Even though Yun Chujo was far away, she could tell that the treasure sword was extraordinary. The old man muttered to himself, Good sword. Good sword. It doesn't look any worse than the treasured sword forged by Master Sword Forger. The old lady said angrily, How do you know? Stop talking nonsense. Then that person abruptly retreated and leaped out of Elder Duamis' attack range. With a fake smile he said, Elder Duanmu, please forgive me for my offense. However, I just want to verify whose sword is better between the two swords. Now that the winner has been decided, please go back. Elder Duamis' face turned red and he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. As the saying goes, the sword is with the person, and the broken sword is the biggest insult to the sword practitioner. In terms of spiritual power, that person was far from being Elder Duamis' match. However, under the watchful eyes of the public, if Elder Duanmu killed him, it was inevitable that he would leave something to talk about. However, if he did nothing, he really could not swallow his anger. Yun Chujio, who was standing at the wonton stall to watch the commotion, said to the old couple, "Elders, I'll go up and take care of that frog at the bottom of the well. I'll come back and chat with you guys later." The old man and the old lady looked at each other. Was this little girl crazy? Before the old couple could say anything, Yun Chujio had already run far away. Seeing that there was a crowded crowd in front of them, this fellow shouted in a clear voice, "Make way! Make way! Make way! I have a peerless sword to crush that shameless frog at the bottom of the well." Hearing that, the crowd made a path for this fellow. However, there was doubt in their eyes. Even Elder Duama's treasured sword had been cut off by that person. What kind of treasured sword could she have? Yun Chujio passed through the crowd and leaped onto the high platform. She said to Elder Duanmu with a look of disdain, "Elder Duanmu, you are good in everything, but you are too soft-hearted. Are you afraid of striking this frog at the bottom of the well? Is that why you didn't take out your good stuff? Don't you know that being merciful to your enemy is the greatest cruelty to yourself? Really, you should return to the VIP seats first. The gadgets you gave me previously are enough to torture him to death. I will soon let him know that he has overestimated himself." Elder Duanmu was dumbfounded. Since when did he give her gadgets? How could she compare with him? However, he thought that this little girl was full of bad ideas. Perhaps there was really a way, so he forced himself to calm down and replied before jumping off the high platform. After Elder Duanmu left, Yun Chujio looked at the middle-aged man and curled her lips. "You don't look like a good person. Otherwise, why didn't you tell us your name? Are you feeling guilty?" The man snorted coldly. "Fine, I want change my surname. He Hongchuan, cut the crap. Show us your sword." He Hongchuan firmly believed that Yun Chujio did not have any treasure sword. After all, even Elder Duanmu did not have one. How could a little girl like her have any treasure sword? Yun Chujio smiled contemptuously and said, "Before I show my sword, I'll let everyone have a look at something good. Everyone, please take a look." Everyone stared with wide eyes. They saw Yun Chujio take out a big black wok. The old man who sold wontons staggered and almost fell to the ground. If this big black wok was used to cook wontons, it would be fine. But if he went up to participate in the sword evaluation, wouldn't that be fooling around? Please visit Palphalpha-1 Co. And the people below also started to jeer. They felt that Yun Chujio was messing around, and He Hongchuan had a disdainful look on his face. When the crowd's discussion quieted down, Yun Chujio said with a smile, "Don't look down on this big black wok of mine. A few people who know what's going on will come up and see what's going on." Some people who liked to join in the fun immediately jumped onto the high platform and took a closer look at the big black pot. They immediately exclaimed, This big black pot has actually been repaired with 1,000-year black iron? Isn't this too wasteful? 1,000-year black iron is such a good material, but it's actually used to repair this broken pot? That's right. This is simply a reckless waste of God's gift. Yun Chujio said nonchalantly, "In our nameless sword sect, the 1,000-year black iron is only good enough to repair pots and pans. Therefore, Elder Duanmu intentionally let He Hongchuan off just now." Yun Chujio's words caused an uproar. Master Ouyang was dumbfounded. When did their nameless sword sect become so rich? How did he, the sect master, not know about this? Palphalpha no one. Sure enough, after He Hongchuan was stunned for a moment, he sneered and said, "What does this mean? Don't talk about him. This is the sword grading assembly. What's the use of having a big black pot?" Yun Chujio said with a smile, "Of course it's useful. You don't know, but Elder Duanmu saw that I'm smart and cute, so not only did he help me fix this big black pot, but he also helped me forge a peerless sword." As Yun Chujio spoke, she took out the best product that every household must have, a large kitchen knife. The crowd below was in an uproar again. Could this little girl be a handyman in the nameless sword sect's kitchen? Why is it either a pot or a kitchen knife? I know her. She's that Yun Chujio, the southern continent's female emperor of Fenghua. I heard that she made a great contribution in Ghost City a few days ago. Ah, so she's Yun Chujio. She's not bad looking, but is there something wrong with her brain? This is a sword grading competition. What's wrong with her using a big kitchen knife? He Hongchuan's face was full of contempt. It's a pot and a kitchen knife. Do you think this is a competition between chefs? The nameless sword sect actually reduced themselves to using a kitchen knife as a treasure sword. This is really an eye-opener. Yun Chujio said with the air of an expert. It's not right for you to say that. As long as there is a sword in your heart, anything in your hand can be a sword. Let alone a kitchen knife. Even a tree branch can be a sword. Don't tell me that you don't even know the most basic swordsmanship, you idiot. He Hongchuan was choked by He Xinjia's rebuke and said angrily, well, since you are determined to compete with me, then let's compete. As He Hongchuan said that, he stabbed his sword towards Yun Chujio. His thoughts could be said to be vicious. Although he said that he was only testing the sword, the bloodthirsty sword in his hand was aimed at Yun Chujio's throat. Yun Chujio's eyes flashed with a hint of coldness. Old man Duanmu was good to her. This person had humiliated old man Duanmu just now. She originally only wanted to teach him a lesson. She didn't expect that he actually had the intention to kill her. In that case, go to hell. Seeing that the sword in He Hongchuan's hand was about to reach her, Yun Chujio took the large kitchen knife to block the bloodthirsty sword. Please visit P-Alpha-1. Ko, Hongchuan's eyes flashed with a trace of viciousness. He was certain that Yun Chujio's large kitchen knife would break. When that happened, he would pretend to accidentally kill this bitch. Those people would not be able to do anything to him. Who would have thought that when the bloodthirsty sword and the large kitchen knife collided, the large kitchen knife would be fine. However, the bloodthirsty sword in He Hongchuan's hand curled its blade. He Hongchuan had never dreamed that this would happen. For a moment he was stunned, but the big kitchen knife in Yun Chujio's hand was still slashing towards his neck. He Hongchuan subconsciously used the blood-devouring sword to resist, and the blood-devouring sword broke with a sound. However, Yun Chujio did not retract her big kitchen knife, and directly cut off He Hongchuan's neck with the force. He Hongchuan's body fell to the ground with a plop, and the half of the blood-devouring sword in his hand also fell to the ground with a bang. Yun Chujio held the bloody kitchen knife and said to He Hongchuan's body, hey, I thought your blood-devouring sword was very powerful, but it failed to restrain its power. I'm sorry. Have a safe journey. See you out. Pialfendialfano in one hand. The audience was shocked that the kitchen knife in Yun Chujio's hand had broken the blood-devouring sword, and on the other hand, they were shocked by He Xinjia's ruthlessness. This little girl looked kind and harmless, but they did not expect her to use a killing move. Wasn't this too ruthless? However, there were also people who could tell that He Hongchuan already had the intention to kill, so he had brought this upon himself. At this moment, Yun Chujio said to the crowd below the stage, our nameless sword sect has a motto. If people don't attack me, I won't attack them. If people attack me, I'll take their dog life. Everyone was in an uproar when they heard this, especially Master Ouyang. He thought to himself, why didn't he know about this ancestral motto? If people don't offend me, I won't offend them. If people offend me, I'll take their dog lives. The first 3 sentences were decent, but why was the last sentence so off-key? After Yun Chujio finished her harsh words, she strolled down the high platform. This time she didn't have to shout, so everyone gave her a path. What a joke. They didn't dare to not make a path for her. This fellow was still carrying that big bloody kitchen knife. The host looked at Yun Chujio's elegant back with a dumbfounded expression. How did this sword-tasting turn into killing? He looked at Island Master Qi and the others in the VIP seats. Was this matter going to end like this? Just kill her? Island Master Qi and the others didn't say anything. With their cultivation, they could naturally tell that He Hongchuan was the first to have the intention to kill. He deserved to die. The leader of the 9 pavilions this time was an elder surnamed Zhu. His eyes flickered a few times and he said with a smile, the nameless sword sect is really impressive. An inner sect disciple is so tyrannical. It's really an eye-opener. Master Ouyang snorted coldly. Yun Chujio was just defending herself. How can she be impressive? Let alone tyrannical. Pialfendialfano Ouyang Chujio swaggered back to the wonton stall. The old couple no longer had their previous calmness. Their legs were still trembling when they looked at them carefully. Yun Chujo could not help but laugh. Old man, I am not a demon who kills people. Why are you so afraid of me? Come, let's continue talking. The old man and old lady were about to cry. Aren't you a demon that kills people? You just killed one person, alright? Although there were deaths and injuries in the previous sword technique conference, it was usually the later competitions that had occasional failures. However, this was the first time someone had died in the sword technique conference. Please visit P-Alpha-1. Combe in particular. This little girl gave people the impression that she was a naive and innocent little girl. Who would have thought that she would become a female demon that kills people in the blink of an eye? The old man said dryly, Aunt Little Fairy, please have a seat. We are going to make wontons. Yun Chujo could not help but roll her eyes. Well, it seemed that she was really scared. Otherwise, she would not have turned from a little girl to a little fairy. She scooped a bowl of wonton soup herself and drank it slowly. The old couple saw that there was nothing unusual about her, so they relaxed a little and continued to make wontons. Although there was such an interlude in the sword tasting competition on the stage, it still went on. However, everyone was a little dispirited. After all, they were used to eating big fish and big meat, so who would be interested in plain porridge and small dishes? When it was close to noon, there were more customers at the snack stall. Only then did Yun Chujo get up and prepare to leave. Although the old couple still had lingering fears, the old man still asked Yun Chujo to come over when she was free. Yun Chujo smiled and her heart suddenly warmed up. Sometimes a kindness from a stranger often made people feel even warmer. Not long after Yun Chujo walked out, Chu Fong came over. Junior sister Yun, you were too awesome on the stage. You were really amazing. Yun Chujo couldn't be bothered with this pervert. She found an empty space, took out a recliner and lay down on it. She closed her eyes to rest. Chu Fong rubbed his hands and hesitated for a moment before saying, Junior sister Yun, you are extremely intelligent. You have unparalleled wisdom. You are beautiful and intelligent. You are devastatingly beautiful. You are peerless. Speak English. Can you think of a way for me to meet her? Chu Fong said with a red face. Yun Chujo had already guessed Chu Feng's intentions. Seeing that he was at a loss and wished that he could find a hole to hide in, she did not have the heart to tease him anymore. She said with a smile, It's a small matter. Follow me. Chu Feng's eyes immediately lit up. He rubbed his hands and could not help but thank her. Junior sister Yun, thank you very much. Yun Chujo did not reply. She brought Chu Fong to the VIP seats. The VIP seats had special people to deliver food. There was no need to go to those shops and squeeze with others. At this moment, everyone was having lunch. Chu Fong saw Yun Chujo bringing him to the direction of Island Master Chi in a carefree manner. He immediately panicked. Junior sister Yun, where are you taking me? Yun Chujo chuckled. Naturally, I'm going to see Little Moon. But Island Master Chi, Yun Chujo glanced at him. What's wrong with Island Master Chi? Can he eat you or kill you? Are you so afraid of him? There are so many people here. What else can he do even if he's not happy? The braver ones will starve to death. Are you going or not? Chu Fong was rendered speechless. Although he was a little timid, he still followed behind Yun Chujo. Yun Chujo was secretly happy. Indeed, the power of love was very great. The two of them soon arrived at the VIP area. Yun Chujo walked in front of Island Master Chi and said with a smile, Island Master Chi, long time no see. This junior sends his regards to you. Although Island Master Chi had changed his opinion of Yun Chujo a little because of the 6-star Dark Spirit Stone, he still disliked her, not to mention Chu Fong, who was coveting his precious disciple. However, he would never hit a smiling person. Moreover, he could not go too far in front of so many people. Therefore, he nodded and did not say anything. Seeing the situation, Yun Chujo said with a smile, Island Master Chi, I haven't talked to Little Moon for a long time. I'm going to take her for a walk. You won't object, right? Before Island Master Chi could say anything, Hei Shinjo continued, I guess that you would agree. Why would an amiable elder like you stop our little sisters from whispering? Little Moon, what are you still standing there for? Come on, let's go for a walk. Please visit P-Alpha-1. Island Master Chi's nose nearly went crooked from anger. He didn't agree at all right? She was talking to herself, but she had blocked her words. He couldn't possibly slap his own face, right? When he came back to his senses, he only saw the backs of the three little ones, especially Chu Feng, who was so close to his precious disciple. He was simply asking for a beating. Island Master Chi was gnashing his teeth in hatred. Chu Feng was simply too beautiful. His little heart was like a happy little rabbit, constantly fluttering. He clearly had a lot to say to Xiaoyu, but he only stammered, You seem to have put on a little weight. Xiaoyu's face sank with a thud. She glared at him fiercely and took 2 steps forward to catch up with Yun Chuzhou, who was in front of her. She was clearly angry. He Xinzhou was speechless. Was this Chu Feng stupid? No girl liked to be called fat, alright? Chu Feng was dumbfounded. Heaven and earth, his original intention was to say that Xiaoyu looked much better and more beautiful than when she was trapped in Ghost City. But he did not know why she said that. He wished he could slap himself twice. This mouth was even dumber than his feet. In his anxiety he hurriedly said, I didn't mean that. I meant you are much better looking than before. You are 100 times better looking than junior sister Yun. Ro alpha di alpha nu omdamit. Burn the bridge after crossing the river, right? Kill the mill, kill the what? You wait. He Xinzhou was extremely angry, but the corners of Xiaoyu's mouth curled up slightly. Clearly, she was very satisfied with Chu Feng saying that she was prettier than He Xinzhou. He Xinzhou was so angry. Roalfadialfanu. This fellow couldn't be bothered to look at their affectionate little eyes. He snorted coldly, A pair of ingrates, scram to the side and don't loiter in front of my eyes. Chu Feng was now filled with affection, and he treated Yun Chuzhi's words as a breeze as he obediently accompanied Xiaoyu to the side to talk. He Xinzhou felt stifled as she looked at their backs. She wasn't really angry, but she thought of her ungrateful fiancé. Chu Feng was the perfect match for a boyfriend, alright? Fawning over her sweetheart in front of her in all sorts of ways. But what about her ungrateful gigolo? She would always be as calm as an old well when she had nothing to do. Damn it, this time she would definitely make him suffer. The old man lay on the recliner and rested for a while in a huff. When the sword tasting session started again in the afternoon, he strolled to the wonton stall. The old couple had most likely adjusted their mood, so they were a little more relaxed than in the morning. They began to chat casually with Yun Chuzhou. The old man saw that Yun Chuzhou was no different from before, so he was not so reserved. He even asked Yun Chuzhou to take out the big black pot to open his eyes. Yun Chuzhou did not pretend and immediately took out the big black pot. The old man looked at it and clicked his tongue in wonder. This 1,000-year-old black iron pot is really different. It looks very sturdy. I think the wonton effect will be good if you use this pot. The old lady pinched him. You haven't shut your mouth for a whole day. How can the little fairy's pot be used to cook wontons? Hurry up and get to work. The old man was not angry after being scolded. He chuckled and began to cook wontons. Yun Chuzhou said with a smile, This pot was originally used for cooking. Why can't I cook wontons? Please visit Palphalpha-1. Co. This fellow was also bored. He actually took down the original pot and put his big black pot on the fire. The old lady quickly stopped him, but the old man was happily washing the pot and adding water. Clearly, he wanted to see how different a 1,000-year-old black iron pot was from an ordinary pot. However, the three of them were soon dumbfounded, because even though the fire below was very hot, the water in the big black pot did not change at all, let alone boil. The three of them looked at each other in dismay. In the end, the old man said, Little fairy, your pot is most likely extraordinary. You'd better not waste it. He Xinzhou was also dumbfounded. It was just an ordinary pot to begin with. Could it be that it had turned into a spirit after being repaired with 1,000-year-old black iron? Although the old man was very surprised, he said with a smile on his face, I guess this thing is in a bad mood today, so it's in a bad mood. The old man, the old lady, the old man was very sensible. He did not talk about the big black pot anymore. Instead, he told He Xinzhou some interesting stories about the previous sword technique conference, which He Xinzhou listened to with great interest. That night, after Yun Chujo returned to the inn, the first thing she did was to take out the big black pot and study it. The old man even bared his teeth and dripped a drop of blood on the big black pot, but there was no reaction. Hei Xinjia's joy instantly turned into embarrassment and anger. Damn it, she thought it was some treasure. But now it looked like it was just a broken pot. This fellow put away the big black pot in a bad mood, and then threw this matter to the back of his mind. The next day, the second part of the sword technique conference lecture began. This lecture was not about cultivation methods but sword techniques. Usually, it was explained by the people from the Nameless Sword Sect and the Flying Flower Island. After all, these two sects in the northern continent were among the best in sword techniques. Of course, they would not be so foolish as to explain their sect's top-secret sword techniques to everyone. They would only choose some simple sword techniques. Even so, the explanations of these mighty figures would enlighten some itinerant cultivators. After the explanations, they could ask questions and the mighty figures would patiently answer them. Therefore, the number of people who came the next day was much more than the first day. Hei Xinjiu still went to the old couple's wonton stall to hide. The old couple was happy to have someone to talk to them, and they got along very well. At this time, the elders of the Nameless Sword Sect were already on the high platform, giving a speech that was easy to understand. Some of the itinerant cultivators below could not help but nod. The old man smiled and said, "Every year at the Sword Technique Conference, the speeches of your sect and the Flying Flower Island are very popular. This is the foundation of a large sect." Yun Chujo humbly exchanged a few words with the old man. The old man thought that the Nameless Sword Sect was not bad. Although there were some troubling matters, it still provided her with protection. As far as she was able, she would naturally do her best to protect the reputation of the sect. After the elder of the Nameless Sword Sect finished his explanation, Elder Jia of the Flying Flower Island continued to explain. Yun Chujo had a good impression of this Elder Jia. When they were in Ghost City, when Island Master Qi and Elder Duanmu had conflicts, it was this Elder Jia who mediated. After Elder Jia finished his explanation, he began to patiently answer everyone's questions. At this moment, a sharp voice said, "Humph! Forget it. The so-called speeches of your Flying Flower Island and the Nameless Sword Sect are nothing more than fishing for fame. What kind of bullshit are they talking about? Please visit P-Alpha-1. As soon as these words were said, everyone's eyes turned to look at the person who spoke. They saw that it was an old man with a pair of triangular eyes that flickered with a cold light. San Jiaoyan. Although Elder Jia was very displeased in his heart, he did not say anything and intended to ignore this person. After all, there was no need to delay the progress of the Sword Technique Conference for such a thing. However, it's also true. If I had to say it, the sword techniques of your two sects are also mediocre sword techniques. They are not worth mentioning at all. No matter how well-mannered Elder Jia was, he could not stand it anymore. He said coldly, "Who are you? What are your motives for spouting nonsense here?" That person sneered and said, "Don't bother about who I am. I'm telling the truth. Everyone, do you think what I said makes sense? Their Nameless Sword Sect and the Flying Flower Island are just treating everyone as fools." Soon someone chimed in, "That's right. When you put it that way, it's true. Every time you talk about sword techniques, it's very ordinary. You even boast that you're from a famous sect. How embarrassing. Right, every time you answer questions, you avoid the important points and make light of them. You even say that you'll naturally understand it when your cultivation is higher. Isn't that nonsense? If you don't want to give a real speech, then say it out loud. You're fooling people with those flowery postures. You're really treating us as fools. Forget it, let's stop talking. How can we compete with sects like the Nameless Sword Sect and the Flying Flower Island?" Whether it was Elder Jia on the stage or Island Master Qi and Master Ouyang in the VIP seats, all of them had ugly expressions on their faces. Well, no matter who was being pointed at and scolded, they wouldn't have a good expression. However, they couldn't do anything about it. Otherwise, it would confirm their reputation of using their power to bully others. Elder Jia thought that these people would give up after a few words, so he just pretended not to hear it. Who would have thought that more and more people would say sarcastic words, and it would be more and more unpleasant to hear. The situation had already gone out of control. Although Hei Xinjiu, who was sitting at the wonton stall, had a good impression of Elder Jia, it was not to the point where she stood up for him. Therefore, even though her small face was a little gloomy, she had no intention of stepping up to the stage to help him out. At this moment, the old man from the beginning pointed his finger at her again. Everyone, these big sects are going too far. Let's not talk about what happened yesterday. That He Hongchuan only stole the limelight from the nameless sword sect, but he was killed by that Yun Chuzhou. What kind of unreasonable behavior was this? What kind of vicious heart was this? Their nameless sword sect would never allow others to be stronger than them. Once there was someone stronger than them, they would use all sorts of reasons to kill them. If that Yun Chuzhou was killed by He Hongchuan yesterday, would the nameless sword sect pretend that nothing had happened? They are relying on the strong to bully the weak. They disregard human lives. As soon as the old man's words left his mouth, many people who thought that they were righteous immediately chimed in. You're right. I wanted to say it yesterday. That Yun Chuzhou is too vicious. Isn't it just a contest of swords? She actually killed He Hongchuan. She's too vicious at such a young age. Also, what ancestral teachings she said are even more unreasonable. If someone offends me, I'll take his dog life? Does she treat everyone else like dogs? I heard that Yun Chuzhou used to be the southern continent's female emperor of Zephyr. A girl actually became some female emperor. One look and you can tell that she's not a decent person. She might have done some shameless things in private. As these words fell into Hei Xinjia's ears, the killing intent on Hei Xinjia's body became more and more intense. The old couple was trembling so much that they were like fallen leaves in the wind. Please visit P-Alpha-1. If she could endure being ridiculed like this, then she would not be Hei Xinjiu. Yun Chuzhou stood up and was about to leave when the old man asked with concern, little fairy, what are you going to do? Yun Chuzhou restrained the killing intent on her body and said to the old couple, the two of you help me cook a bowl of wontons. Leave me to eat when I come back. I'll go and talk to the trash. I'll be right back. The corners of Yun Chuzhia's mouth curled up. In the book, there was a story about warm wine beheading Hua Xiong. Today, she would have a hot wonton torturing the crowd. P-Alpha no one. At this moment, someone saw Yun Chuzhou. Immediately, everyone's gaze fell on Yun Chuzhou. There were also some people who used malicious language to curse. There were even some who threatened to kill the people. Master Ouyang and the others in the VIP seats had a change in expression. They immediately ordered the nameless sword sect's disciples to protect Yun Chuzhou, so that she wouldn't really be beaten up by the crowd. They also had some complaints in their hearts. Why was she joining in the fun at this time? Wasn't she deliberately looking for trouble? Chu Feng and Xiao Yu were the first to arrive in front of Yun Chuzhou. Xiao Yu said in a bad mood, where are you going? Follow me to the VIP seats and sit down. Yun Chuzhou faintly smiled. What are you going to the VIP seats for? I have a clear conscience, so there's naturally no need to hide. I want to see who dares to touch me. Yun Chuzhou took out a large kitchen knife as she spoke. Then she pointed at the person who was shouting the loudest and said, You right, it's you. Didn't you want to beat me up? Come, let's spar. If you don't dare to accept the challenge, you'll be a turtle bastard. The crowd clearly did not expect Yun Chuzhou to be so arrogant at this point in time. For a moment it became much quieter. Although the person pointed at by Yun Chuzhou was a little timid, Yun Chuzhou did not dare to do anything to him under the watchful eyes of the crowd. She said arrogantly, It's not that I don't dare to accept the challenge, it's just that I don't want to fight with you. You vicious bitch, sooner or later someone will take care of you. Yun Chuzhou laughed lightly and said, Get out of the way. I'll have a good talk with him. These bystanders were like grass on the fence. They had been cursing and shouting together. If they really got serious, they would all move back. What a joke. This Yun Chuzhou killed people just because she said so. If she were to slash them, how could they argue? Therefore, the crowd made a path. Yun Chuzhou walked in front of the man with the large kitchen knife. Yun Chuzhou sized up the man and said, Don't say that I'm bullying you. Apologize right now and I'll pretend that nothing happened. Otherwise, it'll bleed you to clear your head. When the man saw that Yun Chujo was serious, he immediately became a little timid. However, he still felt that Yun Chujo would not make a move, so he shouted, Yun Chujo, don't think that you're so great just because you're a disciple of the nameless sword sect. Who do you think you are? Before he could finish his words, Yun Chujia's large kitchen knife was placed on his neck. This person was just an itinerant cultivator. Even if Yun Chujo was just a small fry in the nameless sword sect, it was still effortless for her to deal with him. Roelfa Dialfenu, the man was no longer as arrogant as before. He thought that a super sect like the nameless sword sect would definitely cherish their feathers and have a lot of scruples. Who would have thought that Yun Chujo was a fucking female bandit? While he was hesitating, Yun Chujia's kitchen knife cut his neck again. The man quickly said, apologize, I apologize. I was talking nonsense. I'm sorry. Please visit Alpha-1. Ko Mien Chujo snorted coldly and let go of the man. He was just a Tom, Dick, and Harry. Her target was not him. She just wanted to take care of him. With this incident, the people who were shouting earlier immediately quieted down. However, there were still some people who were shouting. Yun Chujo glanced at them and did not say anything. Instead, she walked towards the old man with triangular eyes who had fanned the flames previously, San Jiaoyan. The old man with triangular eyes was clearly much calmer than the person from before. His face was filled with ridicule. Yun Chujo walked in front of him and said indifferently, this hypocrite, you actually have a belly full of big principles. Why don't we go on stage and talk about it? Xiaoyu, who was following behind Yun Chujo, couldn't help but laugh out loud. Hypocrite. This trash's mouth was really sarcastic. The triangular-eyed old man glanced at Yun Chujo with a gloomy expression and sneered. This is also good. It's just nice to let the people of the world see the true colors of the so-called famous sects like San Jiaoyan. The crowd automatically opened a path, and Yun Chujo and the triangular-eyed old man jumped onto the high platform one after the other. Elder Jia did not know what Yun Chujo was up to. He looked at Yun Chujo with an inquisitive look. Yun Chujo took out a chair and smiled. Elder Jia, please sit by the side and wait for me for a while. If this hypocrite can't win against me, he might shamelessly attack me. When the time comes, please help me take care of him and kill him. Elder Jia. When everyone heard Yun Chujia's words, they couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed because what Yun Chujo said was the truth. Even though they were all disciples of the nameless sword sect, the sword techniques they practiced were different. Moreover, many of them weren't even as good as the outer sect disciples, let alone the inner sect disciples. Yun Chujo continued, also, even if we don't have those considerations from before, the sect has its own rules. If all the sword techniques can be casually taught to outsiders, would that be fair to the disciples in the sect? Ignoring the others, I only joined the nameless sword sect after going through a narrow escape. If you can learn the nameless sword sect's high-tier sword techniques so easily, would I still take the risk to take the test? I don't know what those hecklers are thinking. Do they think that the various sects will stupidly pass on all their treasures to you just because you heckled? Or are you simply harboring evil intentions and trying to turn this sword technique conference into the final realm? Chapter 42-48 was about to vomit blood from He Xinjia's words. Even in his dreams, the triangular-eyed old man did not expect to be struck by lightning. He was struck squarely by it. Although he did not suffer any serious injuries, he was clearly stunned by the shock. The scene was deathly silent. At this moment everyone was thinking, Io, is this Yun Chujo a jinx? Why was the triangular-eyed old man struck by lightning with just a casual remark from San Jiaoyan? Or could it be that the triangular-eyed old man really had bad intentions, so he suffered retribution? Yun Chujo was also very confused, okay? Her jinx skill was sometimes effective and sometimes not. After careful calculation, it seemed that she had not appeared for a long time. Today she actually reappeared in the martial arts world. However, what was the key point for her jinx skill to trigger? However, this guy would naturally not let go of such a good opportunity. He immediately put on a swindler's expression and said, "Hypocrite, I advise you to turn over a new leaf in the future. Otherwise, I'm afraid it won't be a bolt of lightning. You might even be turned into ashes." The triangular-eyed old man was shocked, afraid, and hateful at the same time. For a moment he was actually unable to say a word. He gave Yun Chujo a vicious glance and jumped off the high platform. Everyone came back to their senses and gave him another round of sarcasm. What hypocrite! What green-eyed turtle! The triangular-eyed old man only felt his head buzzing. His chest felt stuffy and he spat out a mouthful of blood. After swallowing a few pills, he left in a hurry. Seeing this, Yun Chujo said to Elder Jia with a smile, "Elder Jia, please continue with your lecture. Give me back my chair. It's quite expensive." Elder Jia. He was convinced that Yun Chujo was stingy to this extent. However, he was convinced by Yun Chujia's eloquence. Just by relying on her eloquence, she was able to make the arrogant San Jiaoyan old man vomit blood. It was simply heaven-defying. Yun Chujo put away her chair and jumped off the high platform. The crowd automatically made way for her. On one hand, she was a little embarrassed. On the other hand, it was because of the heavenly lightning just now. If she provoked this guy, she would casually make another heavenly lightning bolt. But there was nowhere to cry. Yun Chujo jumped to the wonton stall. She said with a smile, "Old man, my wontons aren't cold, right? How is it? I came back pretty quickly, right? If I didn't clean up the scum who scolded me halfway, I would definitely be faster than now." The old couple had just been watching the show and had no time to cook wontons. Now that they heard her question, they quickly began to cook wontons. Chapter 42-49 Humiliation. Master Ouyang, Island Master Qi, and the others discuss for a while before sending people to investigate the whereabouts of San Jiaoyan while searching for some clues. However, they didn't obtain any results. Everyone thought, could it be that they were thinking too much? The next few days were all sword techniques competitions and nothing abnormal happened. Everyone put the previous matters aside for the time being. He Xinzhou was not the least bit interested in sword techniques competitions. On the last day of the sword technique conference, Xiao Yu went up the high platform with full confidence. Xiao Yu won 3 rounds in a row and was defeated by Zhuang Hong in the end. Zhuang Hong had been very unlucky recently. The last time in the Bewilderment Shadow Forest, he was badly injured by the group of iron-armored blood lizards. This time he was finally able to hold his head up high and was naturally very smug. Although Master Ouyang was very dissatisfied with Zhuang Hong's arrogance, seeing that he had won a few rounds in a row, his mood was still pretty good. No matter what, it was good that he had won. At this moment, a middle-aged man leaped onto the competition stage. Zhuang Hong sized up the middle-aged man a few times. He saw that the middle-aged man was at the 3rd layer of the nirvana of the spirit, while he was at the 4th layer of the nirvana of the spirit. His gaze revealed some disdain. "You really want to compete with me? Your spiritual power is inferior to mine, and your swordsmanship can't be compared to mine. I advise you to just admit defeat," Zhuang Hong said arrogantly. The middle-aged man revealed a hint of a cold smile. "If you can't beat me in a fight, then we'll talk about it after we fight." Zhuang Hong curled his lips. Since you're asking for humiliation, then I'll grant you your wish." The two of them drew their swords and engaged in a fierce battle. In the beginning, Zhuang Hong had the absolute advantage, forcing the middle-aged man to the edge of the high platform several times. However, the situation quickly reversed, and the middle-aged man's sword technique suddenly became sharp. No matter what moves Zhuang Hong used, he was firmly restrained by the other party and soon fell into a disadvantageous position. The arrogance on Zhuang Hong's face had turned into panic. Shouldn't be. He used the space-shattering sword technique. Although it couldn't compare to the nameless sword technique that the elders practiced, it was still one of the best sword techniques. How could it be suppressed by the other party? Master Ouyang's expression changed slightly. He knew that Zhuang Hong was bound to lose. To be honest, although the middle-aged man's sword technique attainment wasn't bad, it wasn't that great. If Elder Duanmu and the others were to make a move, they could easily defeat him. But the problem was that the sword technique conference didn't allow the elders to step onto the stage. The nameless sword sect had lost a lot of face this time. Zhuang Hong, as the successor disciple of the sect leader, had actually been defeated by a rogue cultivator. If this news were to spread out, he would have no face to face anyone in the future. A moment later, Zhuang Hong's right leg was stabbed by the middle-aged man, and he directly knelt on one leg on the stage. The middle-aged man then stabbed Zhuang Hong's left leg, and Zhuang Hong firmly knelt in front of the middle-aged man. The successor disciple of the nameless sword sect leader is only SOSO. You've lost, go down. That person said disdainfully, and did not make another move. Zhuang Hong was angry, embarrassed, and a little unwilling. When he thought of the embarrassing situation he would face when he returned to the sect, he almost wanted to die. Master Ouyang's expression was very ugly. That person deliberately stabbed Zhuang Hong's legs, which was to humiliate Zhuang Hong and the nameless sword sect. Although he was very angry, he could not leave Zhuang Hong on the stage and ignore him. He immediately got Chu Feng and the others to help Zhuang Hong down from the stage. When the middle-aged man saw Zhuang Hong being helped down from the stage, he said coldly, "Is there anyone else who wants to compete? Even the successor disciple of the nameless sword sect master is no match for me. I reckon that no one would dare to come up and challenge me, right? If not, the champion of this sword technique conference will be me." Chapter 4250 I am the last disciple of the master of the sect. Although Zhuang Hong was arrogant, he was one of the best among the successive disciples. Since he had already lost, the others would naturally not go up and suffer. Wan Qingba's spiritual power was higher than Zhuang Hong's, but he did not come this time, so none of the other successive disciples went up on the stage. Master Ouyang's face was so gloomy that it was about to drip. Although Xiaoyu from the Flying Flower Island had lost, the Flying Flower Island wasn't famous for sword arts, so it didn't matter. However, their nameless sword sect was different. It could be imagined that if such news was spread out, their nameless sword sect would simply make people laugh their heads off. Hei Xinjiu, who was watching the show at the wonton stall, rolled her eyes. A sinister smile suddenly appeared on her face, and she hopped out of the wonton stall. Yun Chujiu squeezed through the crowd and arrived at the bottom of the stage. Just as the host was about to announce the results of the competition, she hurriedly shouted, "Wait! Wait! I want to compete with him." Master Ouyang and the others were dumbfounded when they saw Yun Chujiu step onto the stage. Wasn't she just rushing up to get beaten up? Even Zhuang Hong was no match for that middle-aged man. How could a small fry like her defeat the strong? That middle-aged man sized up Yun Chujiu and said, "Even the successor disciple of your nameless sword sect master is no match for me. You, a trash at the second level of the spirit realm, want to compete with me?" Yun Chujiu said with a smile, "So what if I'm at the second level of the spirit realm? Although I'm at the second level of the spirit realm, I'm still the successor disciple of the sect master. Moreover, I'm the last disciple. The sect master's sword technique has already been passed down to me. That Zhuang Hong is just a decoration." Master Ouyang almost fell to the ground when he heard that. When did he take her in as a successor disciple? Closed-door disciple? Nonsense. Shameless. Island Master Qi was also stunned. He looked at the stiff-faced Master Ouyang curiously. "Master Ouyang, did you really take that Yun Chujiu in as a closed-door disciple? If that's the case, you can't take in other disciples in the future." Master Ouyang's heart was like a beeping dog. What bullshit last disciple? He had never taken her in at all, okay? However, he couldn't directly deny that Yun Chujiu was a disciple of the nameless sword sect, and had told such a big lie in front of everyone. In the end, the nameless sword sect was still the one who lost face. After all, that little girl was famous for being thick-skinned. Moreover, he still had a sliver of hope in his heart. If Yun Chujiu could really defeat that middle-aged man, she could announce to the public that she was his disciple and save some face. Therefore, he pretended not to hear Island Master Qi's words and did not say anything. In this way he could attack, retreat, and defend. He would wait until the end of the competition to see the result. On the stage, Hei Xinjiu saw that Master Ouyang did not jump out to deny her words. She was very happy in her heart. She had been worried that the old man, Master Ouyang, would not let her go. Now she would kill him first and report to him later. Once the rice is cooked, the rice is cooked. Zhuang Hong, who was recuperating, heard Yun Chujia's words and was about to retort when Chu Feng, who was standing next to him, reacted quickly and knocked him out with a hand knife. Elder Gu saw everything clearly, and the corner of his eyes twitched. This disciple of his had always followed the rules and never done anything out of line. Now he actually dared to plot against Zhuang Hong. He must have been led astray by that little girl, Yun Chujio. The middle-aged man on the competition stage was also shocked. However, he quickly said with disdain, "Is there no one left in your nameless sword sect, or is your sect master blind? He actually took in a good-for-nothing like you as his last disciple." Chapter 4251 Sword Genius. I'm in a good mood now, so I won't argue with you. Come, let's do it. I'll poke a few holes in your body, and then you can go back for dinner. Yun Chujio smiled like a flower. There was nothing she could do, she was in such a good mood. The middle-aged man snorted. "You're boasting shamelessly. Since you're courting death, then you can't blame me." As soon as the middle-aged man finished his words, the sword in his hand stabbed towards Yun Chujio. "Yo, you're really shameless. You actually attacked without saying anything. Fortunately, as the last disciple of the sect leader, I didn't give it to you for free. Otherwise, I would have really fallen into your trap," Hei Shinjo said with a smile as she dodged. This guy's heart was black. She deliberately mentioned the matter of the last disciple time and time again. Even if it was fake, it had to become real. The middle-aged man naturally did not know the twists and turns here. He had only one goal, and that was to kill Yun Chujio. Therefore, his sword moves became more and more fierce, even more fierce than when he was dealing with Zhuang Hong. Although Yun Chujio was laughing and laughing on the surface, she did not dare to relax the slightest bit in her heart. If she were to fight seriously, her spiritual power was too low and she had almost no chance of winning. She had to find another way to do it. She remembered that when she was competing with Liao Tao, she had defeated her opponent at the critical moment by using her sword intent. Now that she had mastered 3 layers of sword intent, if she could successfully stack them, she could totally trick her opponent. However, before that, she had to try the slow sword intent that she had just comprehended. Thinking of this, Yun Chujia's movement technique was still very fast, but her sword moves had become slow. There was almost no movement to attack, and she had been relying on her movement technique to dodge. The crowd below the stage discussed animatedly, although this Yun Chujia's movement technique is exceptionally fast, but after dodging and dodging like this, the final result is still certain to be a loss. TSK, a second level and third level of Lingji can't be compared at all. Okay? I don't know how the nameless sword sect's Master Ouyang took in such a trash disciple, but I've never heard that she was Master Ouyang's last disciple before? This is still hard to understand. Such a useless disciple. How could Master Ouyang have the face to be someone else? Oh. If this Yun Chujio wasn't the last disciple of Master Ouyang, how could she act so arrogantly? I heard that she used the talisman to blow up many successive disciples. Master Ouyang's heart was on fire in the VIP seats. On one hand, he was angry because of Yun Chujia's shamelessness. On the other hand, he hoped that Yun Chujio could create a miracle. But could she really do it? As he watched, Master Ouyang's face revealed a shocked expression. He saw that Yun Chujia's slow thrusts were all flaws of the middle-aged man. Not only that, Yun Chujia's body was already surrounded by sword intent. Could this be the legendary slow sword intent that was difficult to comprehend? At the same time, the others also realized this. Elder Gu exclaimed, "It's the slow sword intent." She actually comprehended the slow sword intent. Heavens! This little girl had already comprehended the chaotic sword intent and the fast sword intent. She actually comprehended the slow sword intent in such a short period of time. Doesn't that mean that she has already grasped 3 types of sword intent? She really is a genius in sword arts. Sect Master, as expected, your eyes are as sharp as torches. Elder Duanmu was so depressed that he wanted to vomit blood. He had clearly taken a liking to this little girl first, alright? However, she was still unable to infuse her sword intent into her body, so she had not accepted her as a disciple. If she had known this would happen, she would have struck first. Chapter 4252 was the first place Elder Duanmu remembered that he had once defeated Yun Chujio. He said that the fast sword intent and the slow sword intent were opposites. It was impossible for a person to master both sword intents at the same time. He suddenly felt his face hurt. However, although Master Ouyang and the others were surprised by Yun Chujio's talent, they still felt that there was almost no hope for her to win. After all, the difference in spiritual power was too big. The middle-aged man thought the same. Although he was surprised that Yun Chujio had mastered the slow sword intent, he was not too worried. He felt that it was only a matter of time before she won. As expected, as time passed, Yun Chujio's movement began to slow down. She could not even maintain her sword intent. She was forced to retreat by the middle-aged man. At this moment, Yun Chujio's forehead was full of sweat. She began to gasp for breath. Anyone would think that she was already at the end of her rope and would be defeated soon. At this moment, Yun Chujio lost her balance and fell to the ground. The middle-aged man's eyes flashed with viciousness as he stabbed the sword in his hand towards Yun Chujio. Master Ouyang and the others stood up in shock. Even if they wanted to save her, it was too late. It was over. Even if the little girl didn't die, she would probably be seriously injured. Elder Dongfeng's eyes flashed. He remembered the last time when Yun Chujio and Liao Tao fought. It was very similar to this scene. At that time, Yun Chujio used the superposition of sword intent to block Liao Tao's attack. This time it should be possible. However, he didn't know if she could superposition 3 layers of sword intent. At this moment, the middle-aged man's sword tip was only 3 feet away from Yun Chujio, but it was blocked by a layer of sword intent that seemed to have substance. The middle-aged man's lips curled into a cold smile. A mere sword intent still wanted to block him? Dream on. He increased his strength, and the sword tip quickly pierced through the sword intent. Just when he thought he was about to succeed, the sword tip was blocked by another layer of sword intent, and it was even stronger than the previous sword intent. His face revealed a stunned expression. What was going on? Just as he was stunned, he stumbled. Before he could react, Yun Chujio's sword had already pierced his left chest. Yun Chujio did not use a large kitchen knife in this competition. Although the large kitchen knife was powerful, it was too short. She was at a disadvantage when fighting with the sword wielder, so she casually took out a sword. The middle-aged man's reaction was fast enough. He jumped out of Yun Chujio's attack range almost the instant he was stabbed by Yun Chujio. Although he was unwilling, he was already injured. Even if he fought again, he would not be Yun Chujio's opponent. Therefore, he said coldly, "I admit defeat. We will meet again." After the middle-aged man finished speaking, he did not wait for Yun Chujio to reply. He directly jumped down the high platform and squeezed out of the crowd to leave in a hurry. Yun Chujio wanted to go down the platform to chase after San Jiaoyan because she felt that this person was very likely to be on the same side as the old man with the triangular eyes. However, she was stopped by the host. The host asked if there were still people who wanted to challenge her. If there weren't any, the first place in this sword technique conference would be Yun Chujio. The onlookers shook their heads like rattle drums. Although this Yun Chujio's spiritual power wasn't that great, her swordsmanship was indeed not bad. Most importantly, she had a belly full of evil water. It was better not to provoke her. Moreover, she was the last disciple of Master Ouyang. With this guy's character, if he offended her, he might not necessarily take revenge. In the end, He Xinzhou became the champion of this year's sword technique conference. Chapter 4253 confirmed her identity. He Xinzhou also felt that she was pretty awesome. She was originally just a bystander, but in the end she became the champion. Don't you think it's infuriating? At this time, Zhuanghong had already woken up. When he saw Yun Chujio, who was smiling like a flower on the stage, he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. It was one thing for Yun Chujio to steal his limelight, but she actually shamelessly claimed that she was Master's last disciple? He would never let her have her way. Thus, he shouted in exasperation, All of you have been deceived by her. She is not my master's last disciple at all, she is lying. Zhuanghong's words immediately caused an uproar, and Master Ouyang nearly fainted from anger. Originally, it would have been fine if no one brought this matter up again. When the time came, he would pretend to be muddle-headed, and Yun Chuzhou, a mere disciple, could not really force him. But now this fool actually shouted out again. Wasn't this forcing him to admit it? Not admit it. What a joke. Yun Chuzhou finally managed to pick up the reputation of the broken nameless sword sect. Could it be that he wanted to slap himself in the face? Thus, before Yun Chuzhou could say anything, Master Ouyang said coldly, "Everyone, Yun Chuzhou is indeed my last disciple." As for Zhuanghong, he was injured so badly that he lost his mind, so he spouted nonsense. Everyone, don't take it to heart. Zhuanghong couldn't believe his ears. The master of the sect had really accepted Yun Chuzhou as his disciple? Under the huge blow, he fainted again. On the stage, Yun Chuzhou was very happy. Old man Ouyang had confirmed her identity in public, and she had become the successor disciple of the sect master. Beautiful. However, when this fellow saw that the prize was only a few bottles of pills and some spirit stones, he was a little disappointed. However, it was a waste of time anyway, so he just accepted it. After the award ceremony, this year's sword technique conference came to an end. Yun Chuzhou jumped in front of sect master Ouyang and bowed to her freshly baked master. "Master, little Zhou pays her respects to you." Sect master Ouyang's heart was like a muttering dog. He had heard of people who were forced to accept disciples, but this was the first time he had heard of someone who was forced to be a master. However, under the watchful eyes of everyone, he couldn't say anything. He could only squeeze out an amiable smile and say, "Disciple, you performed well today. Your master is very satisfied." Yun Chuzhou tilted her head and said with a smile, "Master, since you are so satisfied, shouldn't you reward me with some good things?" Sect master Ouyang. He knew that he couldn't accept this disciple. He had just accepted it, and now he was asking for something from him. Wouldn't he have to plunder all the good things from me in the future? He wanted to not give it to her, but he couldn't keep his pride. He could only take out a low-grade defensive immortal artifact and give it to He Xinjiu. When He Xinjiu saw that it was a low-grade immortal artifact, his smile became even brighter. He followed behind Master Ouyang and called him Master sweetly. Elder Duamu felt sour in his heart. He was so regretful that his intestines turned green. However, since things had come to this point, there was no point in regretting. Yun Chuzhou originally wanted to greet the old couple who sold wontons, but the old couple was probably worried that there would be too many people at the end of the conference, so they had already packed up and left. This fellow had no choice but to give up. As it was close to evening, most of the people decided to set off the next morning. After arriving at the inn and having dinner, Yun Chuzhou had just entered her room when Chu Feng came in with a distressed expression. He even specially locked the door from the inside. Yun Chuzhou looked puzzled. "Senior brother Chu, what's the matter?" Chapter 4254. Seniority Chu Feng only sat on the chair, sighing and not saying a word. Yun Chuzhou could not help but laugh. "Senior brother Chu, you came here to sigh? If you have nothing else to do, then leave. I'm still waiting for a rest." Chu Feng's mouth opened and closed. He gritted his teeth and said, "Junior sister Yun, Island Master Qi has already spoken. He firmly disagrees with the matter between her and me, saying that she can only marry a disciple of the Flying Flower Island. Moreover, he also said that if he finds out that we are meeting privately in the future, he will expel her from the Flying Flower Island and not acknowledge her as his disciple." Although Yun Chuzhou knew that Island Master Qi looked down on Chu Feng, she did not expect that he would be so unyielding this time. It seemed that he had made up his mind. Seeing that Yun Chuzhou did not speak, Chu Feng's heart became even colder. If junior sister Yun could not do anything about it, then there was really nothing he could do. "About this matter of yours, you can't be too hasty. You have to wait for the right time. Besides, he said that you're not allowed to meet in private. Then next time you can meet openly. That old thing will die of anger." Yun Chuzhou said with a grin. "Chu Feng, how can this be? Seeing Chu Feng's hopeless look, Yun Chujio couldn't help but laugh. Senior brother Chu, don't worry. As long as you coax Little Moon to be happy, that island master Chi won't be a problem at all. Sooner or later, he'll agree to your matter. Hearing this, Chu Feng heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. Anyway, there was still a long way to go, so he would slowly think of a way in the future. Chu Feng temporarily put this matter aside and forced a smile. Junior sister Yun, I haven't congratulated you yet. You'll be the sect master's last disciple from now on. Yun Chujio said smugly, that's easy to say, that's easy to say. If there's anything in the future, I'll take care of you. However, I found a problem. Should I call Zhuanghong Marshal uncle or senior brother in the future? Isn't the way we address each other in the sect a little chaotic? Chu Feng was stunned, but after thinking about it, it was true. The successive disciples of the Nameless Sword sect were not from the same batch of disciples, so they were all successive disciples with different seniority. However, most elders only accepted one disciple, and even if they accepted two disciples, they were all from the same batch of disciples. There was really no example like Zhuanghong and Yun Chujio. Previously, everyone had called them randomly and no one had noticed. Moreover, the elders were addressed as so-and-so elders, so it did not involve the issue of seniority. Now that Yun Chujio said this, it did not seem too good. For example, if he addressed Zhuanghong as Uncle Master Zhuanghong, wouldn't Zhuanghong have the same seniority as his master, Elder Gu? It was simply a mess. Yun Chujio curled her lips. It's not that I want to say it, but my master is very busy every day. Naturally, he would not think of such small matters. In the future, I will reluctantly help him. I will handle some of the sect's matters. Chu Feng. So after talking for so long, her ultimate goal was to divide the power. However, it was too difficult. Not to mention other things, the sect wouldn't let a female disciple take over the power. No matter how bad junior sister Yun was, she probably wouldn't be able to use it. Just as Chu Feng was thinking. Yun Chujio said sneakily, let's not talk about this first. Senior brother Chu, tell me. How did you hook up with Little Moon? Did you hook up with her after I went missing? Tell me. Chu Feng's face immediately turned red and he mumbled, no, there's nothing to tell. Senior brother Chu, it's not right for you to do this. If you don't tell me some details, how can I help you convince Island Master Chi? Since you don't want to tell me, then fine, I won't care about your matters anymore. He Shinjo pouted and said. Chapter 4255 Ex-fiancé, you're here? Chu Feng saw that Yun Chujio was about to give up, so he quickly said, I'll talk. After you disappeared that day, Chu Feng and Yun Chujio began to tell the story of his relationship with Xiaoyu. On the other side, Master Ouyang and the others were drinking tea on the first floor and discussing the sword technique conference. At this moment, a man in white walked in from the door. Master Ouyang and the others were shocked and stood up. There was no other reason. The aura of the person who came was too strong. Even they felt a great sense of danger. Master Ouyang and the others did not have the time to look at the man's appearance. The man's cold voice sounded, I am Yun Chujio's fiancé. Where is she? Everyone was dumbfounded. What the hell? Yun Chujio's fiancé? He was Yun Chujio's fiancé? In the past, they had heard that little girl brag about how awesome her fiancé was. At that time, everyone thought that she was bragging. They thought that she was simply stupid to give up Tower Master Luochen for her so-called fiancé. However, now that they saw it, yes, they were stupid. Although Tower Master Luochen was extraordinary, the gap between him and the man in front of him was still very obvious. How should they put it? The aura of the man in front of them was his own aura. And the aura of Tower Master Luochen was more or less borrowed from the power of the 9 pavilions. Di Biming's heart sank when he saw that this bunch of idiots in front of him actually didn't make a sound. Could it be that these people all knew about Little 9 and that little sweetheart? So they deliberately hid it? When Di Biming thought of this, the aura on his body became even more threatening. Master Ouyang's forehead couldn't help but sweat profusely. He hurriedly said, This young master, little Joe is upstairs. I will bring you up now. When Di Biming heard this, he nodded slightly. The aura on his body was slightly restrained. Master Ouyang immediately led Di Biming upstairs with a bitter expression. Elder Jiyu and the others followed behind him. Di Biming frowned but didn't say anything. Master Ouyang and the others hadn't even reached the door of Yun Chujia's room when they heard Yun Chujo giggle. Senior brother Chu, you are quite tender at the critical moment. You are much better than my scumbag fiancé. Master Ouyang. Disciple ancestor, are you unlucky? Why did you have to say such words at this moment? Your scumbag fiancé is going to freeze your newly made master into an ice sculpture. At this moment, Chu Feng said with a smile, Junior sister Yun, it's not that senior brother is boasting, but at the crucial moment, senior brother is much more reliable than your fiancé. Two words flashed through Master Ouyang's mind. Courting death. This Chu Feng was courting death with his strength. Di Biming's face was frighteningly gloomy. He stretched out his hand to push the door, but it didn't budge. It was actually locked inside. A certain honored master couldn't suppress his anger anymore. A man and a woman had even locked the door. What on earth were they doing? Bang! A certain someone smashed the door with his palm. He Xinjiu and Chu Feng, who were chatting and laughing inside, looked at the door in confusion. Yun Chujo looked at Di Biming's gloomy face that looked like a dead man and swallowed her saliva. She stretched out her claws and said weakly, Ex-fiancé, you're here? Ex-fiancé? A cold smile appeared on the corner of a certain someone's mouth. He ignored Yun Chujo and looked at Chu Feng, who had a dumbfounded look on his face. What the hell was that pointy mouth and monkey cheeks? Putting everything else aside, there was something wrong with the name. It was both Chu and Feng. Was it gay or straight? Chapter 4256. My little darling Chu Feng was first intimidated by Di Biming's pressure, and second, he felt goosebumps when Di Biming looked at him like he was looking at a dead person. His legs could not help but go weak, and he staggered and almost fell to the ground. Yun Chujo subconsciously went to help him, but before her hand touched Chu Feng, the poor kid, flew out of the back window with a whoosh. Elder Gu grinned. This was the second floor. Although he was a cultivator, his stupid disciple was scared silly. He might have forgotten to ride his sword. Yun Chujo glared at Di Biming. What are you doing? Why did you slap senior brother Chu away for no reason? Are you sick again? Or did you not take your medicine when you went out? Di Biming looked at her deeply, then grabbed her waist and jumped out of the second-floor window. He Xinjiu dared to say that just now because of the presence of Master Ouyang and the others. Seeing that Di Biming was going to take her away, she immediately wailed, Master, help! Master, you can't just ignore your precious disciple. Master, you can't just leave her to die. Master Ouyang, huh? Why did his ears suddenly stop working? His eyes also stopped working. He couldn't hear or see anything. Elder Duanmu and the others didn't move either. What a joke. Why would they get involved in the affairs of a couple? Besides, if they got involved, they would be tortured to death. Unless they had water in their heads, they would only ask for trouble. Speaking of which, Yun Chujia's fiancé was so powerful. How come they had never heard of him before? It was really strange. On the other side, He Xinjiu was brought out of the city by a certain deity. On the way, she even piqued Kufang, who was badly bruised. Di Biming pointed at the miserable Chu Feng and asked, Is he the little darling you mentioned? Yun Chujo shrunk her neck and looked at the dumbfounded Chu Feng with a look of reluctance. She said no. He is the little darling of the little moon. It has nothing to do with me. Chu Feng finally felt blessed. He felt that he was most likely misunderstood as an adulterer. He quickly shouted, Yes, yes, I like Xiaoyu from the Flying Flower Island. Why would I like junior sister Yun? She is ruthless and full of evil intentions. If I marry her, I'm afraid that she will kill me without anyone knowing. Yun Chujo gritted her teeth. The guilt in her heart was instantly fed to the dogs. Di Biming glanced at Chu Feng. Seeing that what he said did not seem to be a lie, he snorted coldly and waved his sleeve. Scram! The pitiful Chu Feng flew out again. Fortunately, he had experience this time. Halfway through, he thought of riding a sword and disappeared without a trace. Where are you going? Di Biming said coldly. He Xinjiu, who was about to escape, touched her nose guiltily. I don't want to go anywhere. Chum, why are you looking for me? Who's little darling? Little darling is. Yun Chujo planned to take out one of the dumb cubs from the spiritual beast bag to fill in the numbers. However, those dumb cubs kneeled on the ground and kowtowed non-stop. Little fairy master, please spare us. If we go out, we will die without a complete corpse. Yun Chujo. Good, very good, these ingrates. Yun Chujo wanted to release the puppets again. This time, even those drifters squeezed out a word. No! Yun Chujo. This fellow really had no choice. In the end, he took out the big black pot, rubbed his hands and laughed dryly. This is my little darling. As the saying goes, you are my heart, you are my liver, you are my big black pot. Two words flashed through her mind. Done. When the two of them were kissing passionately, Beiming suddenly covered Yun Chujia's mouth. The two of them hid behind a bush. Hei Xinjia's face was red, and she looked at Beiming in confusion. Beiming's throat tightened, and he closed his eyes before he mouthed, "Someone is coming." Yun Chujio was stunned. Who would come here in the middle of the night? Yun Chujio looked out through the gap in the bush. After a while, she saw many masked men gathering in this direction. The leader said, "Search." Yun Chujio and Beiming must be nearby. Yun Chujio captured them alive. Beiming will kill them without mercy. Chapter 4258 was about Meilon Luli again. Yun Chujio was shocked. Who were these people? Why were they so familiar with her and the gigolo's whereabouts? Obviously, someone had tipped them off. The place where the two of them were hiding was not safe. They would probably be discovered soon. Beiming's eyes flashed with a trace of sternness. He gave Yun Chujio a look, indicating for her to stay here. He went out to send them away. Although his spiritual power was suppressed in the towering sky continent, it was not a problem for him to take care of these people. Beiming's figure suddenly flashed. The two people closest to the bushes had already been killed by him. With another flash, another two people fell to the ground. Following Beiming's ghostly figure, there was soon a pile of corpses on the ground. Hei Xinjiu was speechless. Damn, the gigolo was getting more and more powerful. This was a killer weapon that would never fail. The leader obviously did not expect Beiming's spiritual power to be so terrifying. He suddenly remembered something. He took out several items that were shimmering with a faint blue light from his storage ring, and threw them at Beiming, who was fighting. Beiming used his palm wind to smash those items into pieces. However, the next moment he knew that he had fallen into a trap. Beiming felt that the spiritual power in his body was rapidly depleting. Moreover, the cold poison that had not relapsed for a long time had also relapsed. The person who was hurling at him was actually the blue marble. How did these people know that the blue marble was his weakness? Where did they get so many blue marble? Hei Xinjiu, who was hiding behind the bushes, secretly cried out. The pretty boy had been tricked. These masked men not only had high spiritual power, but there were also many of them. If the pretty boy had not been tricked, he could have easily taken care of these dregs. However, the current situation was too disadvantageous for them. Yun Chujio thought of this and was about to go out to help, but Beiming flashed in front of her and held her waist. The aura on his body suddenly soared, and he released an ice dragon to repel the masked men's attack. Then, he brought Yun Chujio and rushed towards the direction of Azure Cloud City. There were cultivators from the 6 sects gathered in Azure Cloud City. These masked men would definitely not dare to follow them in. Therefore, as long as they entered Azure Cloud City, they would be temporarily safe. Yun Chujio saw that Beiming's face was getting paler and paler. There were even ice shards appearing on his hair. She knew that Beiming's cold poison was acting up again. She hated those masked men to death. She kept throwing talismans at them, regardless of whether they were high-level talismans or low-level talismans. Sacks after sacks of talismans were thrown out. Those masked men were unlucky. The few people who were chasing at the front were blown to pieces. Although the people at the back were on guard and avoided the talismans, they also slowed down and watched as Beiming and Yun Chujio entered the Yunsong city. The leader gritted his teeth. There was a large group of cultivators in Yunsong City now. Even if they chased after them, they would not gain anything. Di Biming had already fallen into the trap anyway. There were many other ways to kill him. Hence, he waved his hand and left with the masked men. Yun Chujo saw that the people did not chase after them and heaved a sigh of relief. However, when she saw Di Biming beside her heart could not help but sink. Di Biming's body was already covered in a layer of ice, and his spiritual power level was dropping rapidly. It had even dropped to the spiritual power level. She could not care about anything else. She took out a rolling pin and smashed the ice on Di Biming's body. Then she was going to cut her wrist and use her blood to help Di Biming resist the cold poison. Chapter 4259. Are you injured? Unexpectedly, Di Biming suddenly opened his eyes and said with great effort, "No need. I can hold it." Hei Shinjo saw that he was still stubborn at this time, so she angrily gave him a rolling pin. Unexpectedly, Di Biming wanted to stand up and stay away from her so that she wouldn't insist on feeding him blood. Coincidentally, the rolling pin landed on Di Biming's forehead. Di Biming was already at the end of his tether. This rolling pin became the straw that broke the camel's back, and he passed out. Yun Chujio. Was she trying to murder her husband? However, passing out was just the right time to prevent him from refusing to drink the blood. Yun Chujio was about to draw her blood when she saw Di Biming's body emitting a dazzling light. Then she saw a small silver snake on the ground. It was a small silver snake that was frozen stiff. Yun Chujio was stunned for a moment before she understood. Di Biming's spiritual power had soared for a moment before he managed to get rid of those masked men. He must have used a secret technique, so the side effect was that he had turned into a small silver snake again. However, this was also good. At least she could bring him along with her so that he wouldn't attract any attention. At the same time, she could save his life. She didn't believe that those masked men would dare to openly oppose the Nameless Sword sect. Yun Chujio thought of this and looked at the frozen silver snake. She felt a little troubled. She could not set fire to it, right? In the end, she gritted her teeth and stuffed the silver snake into her clothes. The bone-piercing chill made this fellow shiver. However, she saw that the effect was not bad, so she could only shiver as she walked towards the inn. The inn was brightly lit. Master Ouyang and the others were obviously not asleep. Or rather, this group of old men were all waiting curiously for the follow-up. Elder Duanmu frowned and said, "The little girl's fiancé looks too cold. He won't do anything to the little girl, right?" Elder Dongfang smiled and said, "Don't worry. That little girl is full of schemes. She will be fine." Elder Gu echoed, "That's right. They are a young couple. It will be fine once the misunderstanding is resolved. Moreover, I don't think the little girl's fiancé is an unreasonable person." Chu Feng, whose face was badly bruised. "Are you my own master? Your disciple has been thrown to such a state? And you are still speaking for him?" As everyone was discussing, they saw Yun Chujio walking in from outside, trembling. Everyone thought to themselves, "It seems that this little girl has been taught a good lesson. Otherwise, she wouldn't still be trembling in fear." Master Ouyang coughed lightly and asked, "Little Nine, where's your fiancé?" Yun Chujio squeezed out a smile and said, "He has something to do and has to leave first." "Well, if there's nothing else, I'll go back to my room first." Master Ouyang saw that she didn't look too good, so he waved his hand. Anyway, it wasn't an urgent matter, so it wouldn't be too late to ask tomorrow. At this time, Chu Feng cried out in surprise, "Junior Sister Yun, why is there blood on your clothes? Are you injured?" Yun Chujio looked down in confusion and saw a small blood stain on her chest, and it was still spinning. She was shocked. Could it be that the gigolo had vomited blood? She did not have time to say anything and rushed back to her room. Yun Chujio closed the door and quickly took out the small silver snake from her clothes. It was still cold in her hands, but it was no longer frozen. Hei Shinjo saw that the small silver snake's nose was still bleeding. She was so angry that she threw the small silver snake directly onto the bed. A certain being who was bleeding from his nose could be considered to hate Chu Feng. It was not easy to have a chance to have intimate contact with his wife, but it was interrupted by him. That thing that did not know whether it was straight or gay was really detestable. Chapter 4261. The suicidal Chu Fong Yun Chuzhou comforted her a few more times and suddenly remembered what Xue Wuji had said to her. She picked up the silver snake skin and asked with a smile, "The head of the black chicken told me that you have to put aside the feelings between men and women. Even if you marry me in the future, you will only treat me as a decoration. Is there such a thing?" Di Baiming gritted his teeth. He hated Xue Wuji as well. He explained, "I do want to put aside the feelings between man and woman for the time being. After all, the most important thing now is to improve my strength. However, I didn't say anything about treating you as a decoration. Don't listen to Wu De's nonsense." Yun Chuzhou frowned when she heard that. There was one good thing about a gigolo. He said what he said and said what he said. He would not lie. So was Xue Wuji lying to her? She thought back to Xue Wuji's words and actions and gritted her teeth. The last few sentences were probably made up by that random Xue Wuji in order to attract her attention. She was too angry at that time, so she did not see through his little trick. Yun Chuzhou was about to speak when Chu Feng's voice came from outside the room. "Junior sister Yun, can I go in?" The small silver snake's vertical pupils immediately flashed with a faint light. What was this bent and straight idiot doing here again? Yun Chuzhou stuffed the small silver snake into the quilt and then opened the door. Chu Feng sized up Yun Chuzhou. Seeing that she was fine, he heaved a sigh of relief. "Junior sister Yun, are you okay?" "I'm fine. There's not blood on my clothes. It's stained with something else." Yun Chuzhou originally wanted to send Chu Feng away with a few words, but seeing that he had entered the room by himself, she could only close the door and walk to the table to sit down. Chu Feng lowered his voice and asked, "Junior sister Yun, is your fiancé really gone? You're not lying to me, right?" Yun Chuzhou nodded. "Yes, he's gone. He has other things to do." Chu Feng suddenly seemed to relax a lot. He raised his voice and said, "I'm not saying this, Junior sister Yun, but your fiancé is too rude. He threw me down from the second floor without even asking for the truth. Look at what he did to me." Yun Chuzhou looked at the bruised and swollen face of Chu Feng and said guiltily, "Senior brother Chu, I'm sorry. I've implicated you." Chu Feng waved his hand and said, "It's not your fault. The main thing is that your fiancé is too impolite. I see that he treats you coldly. He wouldn't hit you usually, right? If he really hit you, you can't have such a fiancé no matter how high your spiritual power is. As a man you have to take care of a girl. How can you be so rude? You see, I have always been obedient to the little moon." Chu Feng shivered as he spoke. Why did he suddenly feel a little cold? The little silver snake under the blanket was about to explode in anger. "Good, very good. I will remember you." Yun Chuzhou found it funny in her heart. For the sake of Chu Feng's little life, she began to change the topic. "Senior brother Chu, let's not talk about him for now. Are your injuries okay?" Chu Feng said a little embarrassedly, I'm fine. I didn't react at that time either. Otherwise, I wouldn't have fallen like this. Since you're alright, I'll go back first." "Oh right, I came to tell you that we'll set off tomorrow at midnight. Don't be late." Yun Chuzhou nodded and sent Chu Feng out. This guy closed the door and giggled when he remembered what Chu Feng had said earlier. The small silver snake under the blanket glared at her fiercely. He had already killed Chu Feng again and again in his heart. Chapter 4262. Yun Chuzhou's guest. The next morning, Yun Chuzhou got up on time and put the small silver snake into her sleeve. This way she could keep warm and avoid being taken advantage of by this pervert. After everyone got on the flying spirit tool, Yun Chuzhou felt that Zhuang Hong had been staring at her viciously. This guy sneered in his heart. If he didn't do anything evil, she would keep him for a few days. If he was looking for death, then she didn't mind giving him a ride. Thinking of Zhuang Hong, Yun Chuzhou thought of the middle-aged man from before. Then she was suddenly shocked, and a bold guess surfaced in her mind. Could it be that the 9 pavilions were behind He Hongchuan, the old man with the triangular eyes, and the middle-aged man behind him at the sword technique conference? Although their words were directed at the 6 great sects, their main target was the nameless sword sect, which included the Flying Flower Island. Therefore, after learning about the Gigolo's news, they were able to gather a group of people so quickly. These people had other uses. However, their people had been dealt with by her one after another, so they changed their plans in an emergency. Then the question was, what was the purpose of the 9 pavilions doing this? Yun Chuzhou thought that what they did was nothing more than to defame the reputation of the nameless sword sect, causing its reputation to plummet, and then slowly erode it. Yun Chuzhou wanted to tell Master Ouyang about her guess, but she felt that the evidence was insufficient. Moreover, she couldn't mention what happened last night, so she decided to put it aside for now and wait for the right time to bring it up. However, along the way, He Xinzhou often approached Master Ouyang. Her small mouth was so sweet that it was as if it was dipped in honey. Master Ouyang couldn't stop smiling. Master Ouyang now felt that it was not bad to take in such a disciple, but it was a pity that she was a female disciple. After some time, he would find a reason to take in a new disciple to train her. As for Yun Chuzhou, she could be his disciple, but she would definitely not be the successor of the sect master. If He Xinzhou knew what Master Ouyang was thinking, she would definitely sneer. How could she let others snatch what she liked? Dream on. After everyone returned to the nameless sword sect, He Xinzhou ran back to her courtyard. What He Xinzhou didn't notice was that a disciple from afar peeked at her. This unlucky person was the disciple who was knocked out by Di Baiming. Before Di Baiming left, he had threatened him. If he dared to leak his information, he would definitely kill him. Hence, this unlucky person didn't dare to tell anyone that Di Baiming had come. Now that he saw that Yun Chuzhou had returned safely, he heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. Yun Chuzhou returned to her own courtyard. After washing up, she released the drifters and the silly cuties as usual before she told Di Baiming her guess. It was inconvenient to talk on a flying spirit tool. Hence, these few days, other than stuffing some food into her sleeves, Yun Chuzhou basically did not communicate with a certain someone. Di Baiming felt that her guess was right. The 9 pavilions had been dormant for many years, and they had always been ambitious to rule the entire towering sky continent. The nameless sword sect and the other 5 sects were their stumbling blocks, so they must be plotting to get rid of them. I guess this is only the first step for them. There will be other actions in the future. You just need to remind Master Ouyang from the side, said Di Baiming. Yun Chuzhou nodded and said in puzzlement, let's not talk about the 9 pavilions first. I feel that the Divine Devil Hall is a little strange. Why has there been no movement? They have not been so quiet in other continents. Chapter 4263 won't scare you to death. When Di Baiming heard Yun Chuzhou's words, he said indifferently, on one hand, your attention was attracted by the 9 pavilions, so you didn't notice the actions of the Divine Devil Hall. On the other hand, they had failed in the previous continents. This time they naturally learned a lesson and did things more secretly. However, you don't have to worry too much. Sooner or later you will be exposed. Yun Chuzhou thought about the taste of Di Baiming's words. Then she widened her eyes and said in disbelief, You don't mean that the 9 pavilions have a relationship with the Divine Devil Hall, right? Di Baiming said noncommittally, It's hard to say. I have only found some clues, so I can't make a conclusion yet. Yun Chuzhou still couldn't believe it. The people of the 9 pavilions have real spiritual power. It doesn't seem like they used medicine to increase their spiritual power. Also, I've never seen them use secret techniques. How could it be related to the Divine Devil Hall? It's possible that I guessed wrong. In any case, it's good that you know. Di Baiming didn't say much. After all, he didn't have any concrete evidence. Yun Chuzhou's emotions were a little complicated. Although she did not like Lan Luochen, she still could not believe that he had actually joined the Divine Devil Hall. After a moment of silence, Yun Chuzhou suddenly remembered something. Puzzled, she asked, Didn't Wu Jie's head say that after you broke the seal, you became like an ice sculpture? I see that you still know how to shamelessly take advantage of me. You don't look like an ice sculpture, but more like a pervert. The small silver snake closed its eyes and pretended to be dead, not making a sound. Yun Chujo pouted. TSK, it's not because you turned into a snake that you turned into a pervert, is it? No wonder you have 2 penises. Beiming. Which eye of yours saw that I have 2 whats? Nonsense. He had an ice spirit root. The stronger his spiritual power was, the colder his temperament was. After turning into a small silver snake, his spiritual power had weakened a lot, so his temperament had changed. However, he didn't want to tell Yun Chujo, in case this little rascal became even more arrogant. Seeing that a certain one had been pretending to be dead, Yun Chujo smiled evilly and wanted to check the body of the small silver snake. The small silver snake was so scared that it directly crawled into the quilt. Hei Shinjo had a sinister smile on her face. Little rascal, I won't scare you to death. The next morning after Hei Shinjo had breakfast, she jumped into the courtyard of Master Ouyang. Master, I've come to pay my respects to you. Master Ouyang nodded his head in gratification. It had to be said that ever since he had taken in this disciple, he felt that he had also become a few years younger. The master and disciple were chatting casually when Zhuanghong walked in. Zhuanghong saw that Yun Chujo wanted to strangle her to death, but he couldn't say anything because of Master Ouyang, so he could only pay his respects to Master Ouyang. Master Ouyang's attitude toward Zhuanghong was much colder than Yun Chuji's. He was very disappointed in Zhuanghong now, but because of the many years of master-disciple relationship, he didn't dissolve the master-disciple relationship. Master Ouyang's good mood was also gone. He waved his hand, indicating that the 2 of them could leave. Zhuanghong and Yun Chujo walked out of Master Ouyang's courtyard one after the other. Zhuanghong said viciously, Yun Chujo, don't be complacent. A good-for-nothing like you will be expelled from Master Ouyang sooner or later. Also, don't forget that you and I are not the same batch of disciples. Although we are both successive disciples, you are a generation lower than me. Before Zhuanghong could say anything, Yun Chujo ran back to Master Ouyang's courtyard. Chapter 4264 Account Book. Zhuanghong was stunned. Then he remembered that Yun Chujo was full of bad ideas. He hesitated for a moment but still followed her. Before he got close to the living room, he heard Yun Chuji's loud voice. Master, Zhuanghong has to address you as your brother in the future. He said that you are the big brother, and he is the little brother. Zhuanghong almost sat on the ground. This bitch was simply spouting nonsense. Master Ouyang's face darkened. What nonsense are you spouting? What a mess. Zhuanghong also barged in at this time and said angrily, Yun Chujo, you're spouting nonsense. When have I ever said that? Yun Chujo blinked her eyes. Master, Zhuanghong told me that he and I are not in the same batch of disciples, so we have to address him as martial uncle. Then the problem comes. You are my master and he is my martial uncle. Then aren't you in the same generation as him? Master Ouyang was stunned. He didn't pay attention to these forms of address in the past, but now it seemed that it was a little inappropriate. However, how should he address her? Master, how about this? In any case, in the sect, only the elders and the successive disciples have a true master-disciple relationship. Then, it doesn't matter how many generations the successive disciples are. They can all address each other as the same generation. Yun Chujo suggested. Master Ouyang felt that it made sense. Although it was a little rough, at least it wouldn't be messy. Zhuanghong wanted to object, but he knew that he would be rebuked by Yun Chujo if he said it out loud. Therefore he didn't say anything, but he had some plans in his mind. After Zhuanghong left, Hei Shinjo said with a smile, Master, don't you think him quite smart? If you have anything that takes time and effort, you can teach me to do it. I guarantee that I will help you complete it beautifully. Master Ouyang glanced at Yun Chujo and pondered for a moment. He said, It just so happens that the account of the Spirit Stone mine has been handed over in the next few days. If you have time, help Master check it and see if they have tampered with it. Hearing that, Yun Chujo curled her lips slightly. This was simply a trivial matter, so she said, No problem. Master, where is the account book? I promised to find out all the tricks in it. Master Ouyang looked at her with a complicated expression. And then a pile of account books appeared on the ground. Yoon Chujio looked at the small mountain of account books, and her heart was like a dog that was complaining. Old man Oyang was just messing with her, right? Master Oyang coughed a few times. The affairs in the sect are complicated, so the account books have been piling up in my place, and I have never had time to check them. Since you are so smart, take them back and check them slowly. Hei Shinjo had already bragged, but she could not slap herself in the face. She had no choice but to put the accounts into her storage ring and return to her own yard. Looking at the mountains of accounts in the yard, she felt that her head was about to explode. As expected, the older the ginger, the spicier it was. Old man Oyang had seen through her thoughts, so he had made such a move to show her off. She had a photographic memory, and she was extremely smart. However, with so many accounts, how long would it take to review them? Just as she was worrying, the drifters thought that these account books were new toys that Yoon Chujio had gotten for them. They crowded around and threw the account books around, enjoying themselves. Yoon Chujio's head was buzzing. She stomped her feet and shouted, "Put them down! These are not toys for you." The more Hei Shinjo shouted, the more excited the drifters became. They thought, it was too fucking fun. Chapter 4265. Troublemaking drifters. Hei Shinjo was so angry that she almost died. However, the drifters were not afraid of her at all. The ledgers were thrown all over the yard. Fortunately, the ledgers were much stronger than the ones in the secular world, otherwise they would definitely fall apart if they were thrown around by the drifters. Hei Shinjo roared in anger, "If you dare to be evil again, I won't bring you out in the future. You can put mushrooms in this yard." Hearing Hei's injurious words, the drifters threw the books on the ground and went to play on the slide and swing. In fact, these drifters felt that they had played enough. Otherwise, Yoon Chujio's threat would not have worked. Hei Shinjo looked at the books on the ground and felt like crying. She did not need to cultivate after reading so many books. However, if she did not do it, Old Man Oyang would have even more excuses not to give her power in the future. She was really in a dilemma. It was not that Hei Shinjo had not thought of hiring people to help her with the accounting, but these accounts were confidential and it was not convenient for others to handle them. Just as Hei Shinjo was feeling bitter, the little silver snake said, "This venerable self will audit with you. 2 people are faster than 1 person." Yoon Chujio's eyes lit up. That's right, she still had a freeloader to feed. There was no need to use it. Therefore, Hei Shinjo got Meng Yanshou and the rest to pick up the accounts books and arrange them neatly. She and Di Biming started to audit the accounts. However, just as they started to audit the accounts, the drifters came to cause trouble. They threw the neatly arranged accounts books into the yard again. Hei Shinjo was completely enraged this time. This fellow carried a large kitchen knife and chased after the drifters all over the yard. However, the drifters were not afraid of being hacked at all. They even rushed over to let her hack at them, almost causing this fellow to vomit blood in anger. A certain someone looked at Hei Shinjo, who was jumping all over the yard with doting eyes. He felt that such a lively little scoundrel was simply too cute. If Hei Shinjo knew what this person was thinking, she would definitely roast him into a dried snake. Lively my ass. She was about to die from anger. Yoon Chujio chased after him for a long time and was panting tiredly. She sat on the chair and panted as she scolded, "A bunch of white-eyed fools. I will tear down the swing and the slide in a while. Let's see if they are still showing off." When those fools heard that Yoon Chujio was going to tear down the swing and the slide, they immediately stopped and sneakily returned the account books to the stone table. Yoon Chujio narrowed her eyes. So these white-eyed drifters were afraid of this. However, the most important thing now was to review these account books first. When there was time, she would deal with these white-eyed drifters. When Yoon Chujio thought of this, she picked up an account book and began to read it. She did not need to use any abacus. After scanning it with her eyes, the basic results were out. She stole a glance at the small silver snake and realized that he was also flipping the pages very quickly. Clearly, the speed of a certain person's mental calculation was not slower than hers. The corners of the guy's mouth curled. He became competitive and sped up. However, even though the speed of mental calculation was very fast, there were too many books. It would take them at least 7 or 8 days if they didn't eat or drink. Hei Shinjo was a little impatient. She threw the books on the stone table and looked at her group of silly cuties. Then she said, "What's the use of raising you? If you can audit the books, can I go and cultivate?" Buttface, who was running crazily in the yard, said eagerly, "Little fairy, if you don't mind that I'm stupid, I can help you do it. However, I only know how to add and subtract within 10. If you include my toes, I can barely do anything below 20. I won't count any more." Yun Chujo said, "Get lost." Chapter 4266 was finally completed. Buttface was not angry even though he was scolded. He said slyly, "Little fairy, although I don't know how to calculate, curly hair knows it and so does that kitten. They are all scheming people. How can they not know how to calculate?" Yun Chujia's eyes immediately lit up. She looked at Meng Yanshou and the kitten and asked, "You guys know how to read accounts?" Meng Yanshou and the cat cub hated Buttface, who was a snitch. However, they did not dare to lie. Meng Yanshou said dryly, "Just a little." The cat cub also said weakly, "I only know a little." Yun Chujo narrowed her eyes and did not say anything. She just threw a pile of books to the two. The two of them couldn't begin to look at the books bitterly. It would be great if they could play by the side. Who would be willing to look at this stupid thing? Yun Chujo looked at them coldly. Although the nightmare beast and the kitten were slightly slower than her in debeaming, they were still much faster than the average person. As expected, they knew how to count. Buttface saw Yun Chujia's cold gaze and was gloating in his heart. The kitten and curly hair had always wanted to compete for the pet. They wouldn't be able to trick the two of them to death. With the help of Meng Yanshou and Cat Cub, the speed was much faster. After 3 days, they had finally finished reviewing the pile of ledgers. Yun Chujo carefully looked at some of the connections in the ledgers. In the end, she wrote a summary of the results and eagerly went to see Master Ouyang. Master Ouyang had thrown a pile of ledgers to Yun Chujo in order to make her quit. Not to mention the position of sect master. He did not even want her to do the daily affairs. It was impossible for a female disciple to do these things. Therefore, when Master Ouyang heard that Yun Chujo had finished reviewing the books, he was shocked. Then he said with a straight face, "Little Joe, this is not a joke. If you dare to deceive me, humph." Hearing that, Yun Chujo smiled and handed a few pages to Master Ouyang. "Master, please have a look." Master Ouyang's mouth twitched when he saw the dog-like handwriting on the pages. However, when he saw the contents, his face was full of shock. He followed the words written on the pages and randomly checked a few ledgers. He found that the flaws he pointed out were not wrong at all. Did she really finish reading all those ledgers in 3 days? Was she still human? After a long time, Master Ouyang finally came back to his senses. He said to the calm and composed Hei Shinjo, "You should go back first. I will look for you if I have any questions." How could Hei Shinjo leave just like that? What a joke. She had worked so hard for 3 days and was sent away just like that? In your dreams. "Master, I am your last disciple after all, and I can write and calculate. You should at least arrange some errands for me, right? I think it's good enough to inspect the upper, middle, and lower courts' big kitchens when I have nothing to do. What do you think?" Master Ouyang was so angry that he laughed. He had seen thick-skinned people before, but this was the first time he had seen such thick-skinned people. However, he thought that this little girl was a scoundrel. If she did not agree, she might not cause any trouble. After all, the big kitchen was not involved in anything. It was not a big deal to let her interfere. Therefore, he nodded. "All right, then I will hand over the 3 quarts big kitchen to you to manage. If anything goes wrong, I will hold you responsible." Yun Chujo immediately thanked her with a smile and left with the sect leader's decree. When this fellow left Master Ouyang's courtyard, the corners of her mouth curled up. "There's no rush. Simmer it slowly. Let's take it slow. Sooner or later, she will make Old Man Ouyang cry and beg her to be the successor of the sect leader." You're tuning in to the Li Mei Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.